Okay, welcome everybody to today's interest session. Interest is New York Tech's remote engagement sessions in technology. It's run out of our ETIC lab, our Entrepreneurship and Technology Innovation Center. I'm Dr. Nizik, the director of the ETIC, and I'll be your host for today's session. So this week we are covering introduction to cybersecurity as a career. New York Tech is a center of academic excellence in cyber defense education. Our computer science and information technology programs are designated by the NSA as programs of excellence that you will get a certificate from if you graduate from those programs, from those concentrations. And there's other benefits to that we'll talk about during this program. And the primary goal of this program is to talk to you about not just the technologies and cybersecurity over the kind of the blanket, the kind of overarching area of cybersecurity as far as information technology goes, but also to show you a little bit of some of the technologies that are in use and that you should know and be aware of if you're thinking about going to cybersecurity as a career. So with that, I will tell you a little bit kind of about myself here. I am the director of the ETIC. I am an adjunct associate professor here in computer science and cybersecurity. I'm also the director of the Center of Academic Excellence program here, point of contact for the NSA. And I also am the PI for the CYSP scholarship program, which is the Department of Defense scholarship program. The reason I bring this up specifically today is because the program announcements will be coming out in November. So those of you who aren't aware of the CYSP scholarship program, the United States government wants to attract people from programs, from the NSA designated programs like ours, to apply for the scholarship. And as many years as you get the scholarship, it's a full scholarship, including tuition and fees. Plus, there's a $25,000 undergraduate stipend and a $35,000 graduate stipend per year. So if you take the scholarship for 2 years, all your education is paid for, and all of you, and you also get a stipend per year as well for spending for. Could be room and board. It could be just for other types of expenses if you're living at home or whatever. But it is money that you can decide how to spend. That scholarship requires you to, for a number of different things, it requires you to be a United States citizen or green card holder. It also requires you to be already in the concentration and graduating within the next 2 years from your program. But it also requires you to work for the government in the selected department who has provided you with the scholarship for the amount of time that you take the scholarship. So if you take 2 years of funding, you have to work for 2 years for the United States Army, for Navy, for Department of Defense, NSA, whoever selects you for the scholarship. It's a very competitive scholarship, but we have won 5 already, so it is real. And it is something that we are going to be opening up in November again this year for a deadline of February 2024. So you have to be able to prepare your scholarship and your letters of reference and everything else application by February of 2024. Okay, and the funding would start the following September. All right, so that's something that keep an eye out for. That invite will go out to all College of Engineering and Computing Sciences students in November, I believe, sometime mid to late November. The announcement, and there'll be a link to a form, an online program that that the Department of Defense runs that you'll be applying to. And with that, just a note on the bottom here, I consistently publish and get interviewed for cybersecurity kind of outlets and media outlets, on a regular basis. So you can read up on those as well. So for those of you who aren't aware, we have a New York City campus and an Old Westbury campus. And the ETIC itself, we have 2 ETICs, one in each campus, one on the 6th floor in Manhattan and one in 107 in Harry Shearer Hall. Each one has the ability to, we have kind of cyber-related networks and labs you can work on if you want to gain hands-on activities in that area. And some of our other programs, like the YouTube channel, the NASA prototyping program, and the interest program, we have prototypes that we build that are cybersecurity related, so you might be interested in those as well. Okay, So you can come visit us kind of whenever you like at the room 607 in Harry Shearer Hall, 1855 Broadway, in the city, and Harry Shearer Hall, room 107 in the Long Island campus. Okay. And with that, let's talk about cybersecurity as a career. And let's start talking about some very practical kind of applications. One of the entry-level jobs that you do get in cybersecurity usually is cybersecurity analyst. That job actually winds up either working remote or hybrid or on site, depending on the company that you work for. And the idea is that you know enough about cybersecurity, enough about technology and communications, telecommunications specifically, on the way kind of TCP/IP works, and the way packets are sent, and the way networking works, and configuration of IP addresses, and all that stuff. But basically, a cybersecurity analyst will watch what's called an endpoint system that gives you alerts and warnings and alarms of things that it thinks are are anomalies that shouldn't be happening. And it's your job to investigate to see if they really truly are any kind of a breach or attack. Level 1 cybersecurity analyst is usually bubbles it up to level 2, and then level 2 levels up to level 3 and goes to an architect and so forth. So these initial kind of alerts that you get, that you have to understand what's happening and why it's happening, and maybe it's normal for that particular organization, but it's a pretty darn good job. And as you can tell, the salaries that are even considered starting salaries are extremely high. So the more you know about technology, the more you know about cybersecurity as an overarching kind of blanket to technology, and the more certificates you have, meaning that you have a bachelor's degree in computer science with a concentration in network security, you have a NSA designation certificate because you came out of that program, you have a CompTIA Network Plus certificate, you have a CompTIA Security Plus certificate, right? So the more you have to show that you are truly a security focused person, the more chance you have to get these jobs that are out there. So one of the things that we talk about in a program like this is called the education workforce gap, as far as cybersecurity goes, and it's the gap between people coming out of programs and the available jobs that are that are out there. So roughly this year, this presentation is a little bit dated, but this year is about 630,000 jobs in the United States alone, 3 million globally, but about 3+ million, but about 630,000 jobs in the United States. That means that there aren't enough people coming out of programs like ours that are formally trained in cybersecurity and the cybersecurity jobs that they can actually walk into and start doing that job. And there's all kinds of reasons for that. But overall, the main reason is that there aren't enough people deciding that are in technology currently deciding to focus their technology studies and work into cybersecurity specifically, right? They're going into game design or database design or enterprise database management or data science or whatever, which are all needed and all required, and it's wonderful. But cybersecurity is a very specific field where you have to take all that knowledge but apply it very focused to solving crimes, right? There's a crime that happens and you have to basically stop that crime from happening, but also when it does happen, you have to create a case against the perpetrator to try to make sure that you have a way to not let it happen again, but also have a way to document it for all kinds of legal purposes if they do finally have a case against the person who committed the crime, right? So there's a whole criminal aspect to cybersecurity that you may not be aware of, and many technologists and technology students just focus on the building kind of aspect of technology, not really the criminal aspect of it. Right. So to put it all into into some perspective, you have breaches and you have attacks, and then you have the way that they're kind of executed. Some of the ones that you may have known of, the Equifax breach, the Anthem breach, the JP Morgan breach, all these different companies, and probably hundreds more now because this is a couple of years old. These breaches were downloads of data. They were ransomware attacks that the ransom was demanded to decrypt the data. And the way they do these things are with the methods they use are with viruses and phishing attacks that basically kind of trick people into activating the scripts on their local network. Okay. So there's a history to cybersecurity that you may not be aware of, but it goes back a long, long way. The really goes back to there's a cipher called Caesar Shift cipher, so it goes back as far as thousands of years to the Roman Empire, to encrypting messages on the battlefield and stuff like that in certain ways to kind of scramble up the message so that nobody can get that. We kind of go back as far as, Alan Turing in 1936 that basically theorized that this binary system was able to be created. The binary system we use today was a theoretical construct he came up with. And ever since then, we've been kind of fighting how to turn those binary values into, how to scramble them up in a way so that nobody can really read them. And today, we wind up having the Internet of Things, IoT, Internet of Medical Things, IoMT, and we have somewhere in the realm between 11 billion and 20 billion devices all connected to the same network that we know as the Internet. And each one of those can be considered another access point to any other point on that network. So it's an incredibly sensitive and incredibly vulnerable network. On top of all that, all these devices speak a standard language that all computers speak to each other, which is TCP/IP. So whatever device you create today, whatever device has been created years ago, those devices are unique in their own design, that they're talking their own language to themselves. But before they send data out to be read by any other device in the world, they're converted to TCP/IP. So the fact that there's a TCP/IP in a global system that everybody uses makes it much more vulnerable. It makes it much more usable. It also makes it much more vulnerable because once somebody designs a really good attack on one device using TCP/IP, they can do it really to any device in the world and it'll still work, right? I mentioned this just earlier, just before, but we're on the way to 20 billion devices, all attached and all connected to the same network. Each one of those can be used, can be used as an access point to perform some sort of an attack on any other type of device, right? What we don't have before that we have now for years now is a marketplace for stolen data, right? So this type of environment where these devices are all kind of housing some valuable data on them at some level, so are the people behind those devices that can be tricked using something called social engineering to give up information to some sort of an attacker, passwords, usernames, account numbers, things like that, credit card numbers, authorization, expiration dates, things that can be converted into cash by the criminal. There's now a marketplace called the dark web, which is this unlisted kind of network that people can use to buy and sell stolen data, which means that your data has become way more valuable than it was in the past because now there's a marketplace to actually sell that data. So now we're dealing with that as well. Again, you'll notice it's a few years old, this presentation, but some of these numbers are now almost twice as much. But if you look at some of them, just the mind-blowing, the amount of money that we wind up losing per year and per incident, right? The IBM report that comes out every year, and then there's a Ponemon report as well. That number is $4.5 million average recovery cost per breach. So any company that winds up experiencing a breach of any kind, their average recovery cost from large companies to small companies, the average is $4.5 million. Now, somebody may incur a few $100,000 at a smaller company, some may incur $20 million at a larger company, but the average, which is enormous. If you think about the amount of time it takes to earn $4.5 million, and even worse, to profit $4.5 million, one single breach could actually cost that company $4.5 million, and wipe out an entire year or even 10 years of earnings and profitability, right? So the issue of cybercrime in general is a very serious issue. It's taken unbelievably seriously, and the fact that we need skilled professionals that work in the field that have a technology background and have a software background, and have a real good knowledge of an information system, being 5 components that we always talk about, which is software, hardware, people, processes, and data, and how those work together. But now we have to put this criminal aspect on top of it and talk about this, kind of how a person is committing the crime. We call it MO, modus operandi. So we have this need, this directed need for cybersecurity professionals, and so much so that the NSA has designated this Center of Academic Excellence program, CAE program, to take every college offering a program and allow them to raise the level of that program to involve students, hands-on activities and outreach to the community and all kinds of things that we do here. But on the same note, it's to get students that when they roll out of the program, they're ready to go with their hands-on skills, right? So this program does exist. As I mentioned, they offer a scholarship for you to apply for in November. Feel free to apply for that once you get the announcement. We'll help you with your application as far as getting you prepared and helping you fill any gaps that skill-wise that you don't have possibly before you apply. And you'll notice we're one of the only few schools in the region that actually have the program and offer the scholarship. So you're lucky enough to be here, take advantage. You're lucky to be at the school that has it, take advantage of it, and apply for that scholarship as well. If you look at the concentration requirements and some programs that you have, it's really the computer science program with some additional network-related and cybersecurity-related programs that you have. And along with that, we offer some internships and things like that at the ETIC, that we have a certificate program that you could build a unique cybersecurity application. As part of your practice, you can do some ethical hacking as part of your certificate program. And ultimately, you can wind up applying for the scholarship with some really good hands-on activities. As a career, again, I mentioned when you're going for a job and you're going for the actual positions that I showed you earlier, that you, the cybersecurity analyst position, some of these certifications, professional certifications, always help you to do that, right? So you have Network Plus, A Plus, Security Plus. These are CompTIA's certificates that people look at and say, yeah, I get it. If you took that test, if you studied for that, you took that test, you have a real good working knowledge of information technology, and on top of that, a real good working of networking, and on top of that, a real good understanding of security and the components of security. IAC Squared is the largest professional cybersecurity organization in the country, really in the world. But there are local chapters that are around. The Long Island, New York City has a local chapter, so you can join that chapter as a student for, I think, $15 or something. Every month they have different organizational events that always teach you something new about what the FBI is doing, what the Department of Defense is doing, what different companies, technologies they're offering. Sometimes it's actually hiring, you know, as far as who's hiring. So those events are really good. Those organizations are really good to join, but they're also really good to go for those events. So IAC Squared, I would look for that local chapter and join it. On the same note, I would also consider some of the actual certifications that they have based on what you want to go into. IAC Squared is usually the cybersecurity administration, the leadership portion of it, as well as the technical portion of it. So the different certifications you can get are they have different meanings, right? They mean something different when somebody looks that you have one or the other. And then ISACA has certifications. ISACA is the auditing portion. There's two parts of cybersecurity. One is the portion where there's employees that are protecting the organization from the attacks and from the attackers. The other part is the auditing group that's making sure the companies are meeting those requirements based on their requirements, right? So if you're taking credit card information and storing it, you're under something called a PCI DSS a framework or legalities that you have to meet certain security features and minimums for that. If you're dealing with healthcare information, you're under HIPAA. If you're under a public company and you have stockholders and shareholders, you're under Sarbanes-Oxley. You have FINRA, which is a financial organization and framework, right? So the ISACA is the group of cybersecurity experts that audit all the other companies to make sure that they're actually meeting those requirements as well. some of the job descriptions, right? So security analysts, right? Security engineer. Analysts are looking at different situations that are happening in your organization. Are they actually attacks or not? They're assessing kind of vulnerabilities that might be some older machines, some older network equipment or whatever. You're assessing those and figuring out what needs to get done to mitigate those. The engineer is actually doing a lot of the tech work to make sure that some of these things are done to make you safer. But when something does happen, they're also accessing all the logs and everything to build a case against whoever it is caused the attack. The security architect, is designing the network from scratch or redesigning it to make sure that it's building an efficient, secure network for maximum performance. The administrator is making sure that every new employee, every current employee is trained and has the right security access and only belongs to one group or the other with certain access to certain folders on the network servers and emails and things like that. But the administrator also manages what we call basically it's like a need to know. Like if you don't have, we call it principle of least privilege. So if you don't need to know need to have access to certain documents, you won't have access to those until you need access to those, right? And the security administrator makes sure that person has access. So that's more of it's a technical job, but it's also more of a management job than it is a design job. Then you have software developer, where you actually are building software for an organization that needs solutions, but you're also making sure that that software that's being developed is also incredibly secure, so you avoid any kind of zero-day exploits that somebody may identify through your software, right? Those are things like any kind of buffer overflow attacks that might happen through the software, through any kind of user entry screens, right? Any kind of redirects or SQL injection type attacks that will damage your database by attacking the software, right? They're trying to minimize the value of the database and then charge you for the repair of that database. And then of course there's cryptographer and cryptologists, which try to build new ways of encrypting data, but also try to apply modern ways and current ways that are available commercially to data that might not be encrypted very strongly at the moment. Then you have something called the CISO. So the Chief Information Security Officer is the top level security officer in an organization. They answer to the president or the CEO, and they, overall, they basically make sure that the organization's policies and everything else that they have in place is making sure that organization every day is as high as it possibly can be. We call it security posture. You have a high security posture, a low security posture. You want to make sure that organization has the highest security posture possible for that day. Remember, cybersecurity is day to day, minute to minute. Like at 5 o'clock, you could be super secure and have a high security posture. At 5:01, a zero-day exploit was actually released and nobody knows how to fix it. And you are now with the rest of the world at their beck and call at 5:01, right? So you have, that is the cybersecurity world. It could be any time of the day, any kind of time of the night, and you're only really as good as you currently are. The next minute, it could change that depending on who releases what. Okay, and then of course there's the consulting world, like everything else. There's a really good series of documents and a website. It's something called NICE, which is the National Initiative for Cybersecurity Education. I think they just call themselves NICE now. They just use the name, but that's what it stands for. And it's called the Cybersecurity Workforce Framework. And this document will essentially lay out every different category of employment and what role you play. And then each individual work role has its own bullet points of what you need to know. And it's a really good document, or a series of a document, or really web pages now as it grows. It used to be one big document. Now it's actually organized as a website. But you can actually go into that framework and learn about, what do I really need to do task-wise based on this role in this overall category, right? So if you say that I think I want to be in the protect world, I want to basically work for an organization and protect it from attacks, then you have to go to deploy and look at network operations specialists, but you look at like the different work roles and the particular tasks in the work roles. And the reason I say this is that, like, if you look at the work roles and the tasks under the work roles and you say, I know how to do that, I know what that is, I don't know how to do that, and I don't even know what that is, it gives you a nice checklist to be like, let me go read up on that. This is the area I think I want to be in, but there's like 75% of this stuff I'm not really sure what it is or if I do it. And then as you start to learn that, through your normal ways in classrooms and programs, certificate programs, but YouTube, right? All these different tools you have at your fingertips today in 2024. You want to be able to kind of look at those roles and learn, like that. This document gives you a really good bullet points of everything that is out there. Okay. So, I like to do this thing kind of like, what do we know? What do we don't know? And this will lay out everything that you need to know for deciding whether you want to go into cybersecurity as a career, right? So, what do we know? We know that we're moving, towards 20 billion connected devices, which just automatically, every new device gives us a new vulnerability area. Now, these IoT devices, they're smaller and simpler, and they're not as powerful, so they can't run the same security software solutions that a large device like a tablet or an iPad or a laptop or a server could run. So typically these devices are connecting to your network just like every other device, but they have very weak security because they don't have the processing speed and ability to run the same level of software, right? Your Fitbit can't run your Norton antivirus software because it doesn't have the processing power to do it. So it's weaker security. So they become these targeted access points to your networks. We know that customer demand and for the ease of access to data is increased, and mobility will continue to increase. So as customers of banks and of Amazon and everything else, we're asking for more and more, right? If I told you today, 20 years ago, that there was going to be an app, that you slide and transfer money to somebody with a slip of a thumb without even a password, you'd be like, what? And that's what we have, right? We're asking for this ease of splitting a bill, right? At during a meal and this ease of money transfer. And it's every time we demand that from our vendors, we're creating these vulnerabilities and potential attacks that everybody says, oh, why don't we just do this to that app and benefit from that? So we're demanding more as customers, but it's also creating more vulnerability, which is driving the whole industry for people to solve those things. We have a formalized marketplace now for stolen data. It's incredible. Like, this is the driving factor that there's some place to actually buy and sell these lists that are stolen and these data that is stolen. So it's really this one driving factor that's fairly new, that there is no longer this clandestine kind of underground network. It's now an accessible marketplace to do this without really having the potential of getting caught. So we know that cybercrime has been and will continue to increase exponentially due to increased mobility. So we know that this, career-wise, we know that cybersecurity is not going anywhere for the next 20 years easily. And we also know that we're training people like yourselves that are formally being trained in cybersecurity. We don't really know what's going to happen with that. We're training people like never before on how to actually breach systems, to teach them how to defend against breaches, right? But we've never done that before. This is a new area for us. We know that the gap between the jobs and the trained people is always increasing. We're not closing it, even if we hired 10,000 people today. It still wouldn't even close the gap just a little bit. Like, we would still have to hire 10,000 people next year and even more. So career-wise, cybersecurity is an excellent choice because of the stability of it and because of the growth that you can experience in that versus possibly not as much in another area. Okay, and things that we don't know yet. We don't know if the increasing jobs is going to entice people to change their careers, right? It's if you want to be a game developer, then you want to be a game developer. There's no turning you into a cybercrime, fighter. It's we can't guarantee that just this availability of jobs and just the skill set is going to turn somebody into a cybersecurity, right? I want to do database design. I want to do data mining and data analytics and data science. And I'm not really interested in the crime aspect, right? We can't guarantee that. We don't know if people changing their careers are going to be successful in cybersecurity. We don't know if you were doing something else in life and decide to go into cybersecurity that you're actually going to be good at it. We don't really have any proof of that. So it's not something that just because the jobs are there, that means you're going to get the job. And it certainly doesn't mean you're going to be successful in it. So it's something to consider very carefully as you're choosing careers. The gap that we're talking about, the next one, the gap that we're talking about, we're trying everything possible to make sure people understand all this, but we don't know if all those efforts are going to really fill this gap, which means that the cyber crime and the losses are going to increase exponentially almost if we don't really find ways to truly fill this gap between available jobs and people going into the industry. And we talked about the long-term training of people. We don't know if that's going to be have an effect on everybody going in to be a good guy versus some people going off to be kind of cyber criminals, which we hope wouldn't happen. And we don't know what the future brings, right? We don't know what paradigm shift is going to happen that's going to make cybersecurity not as important, right? So I always compare this to the early days of electricity when you had the lights in the streets. They were all kerosene, right? And people would go out and light them every day and stuff them every day. And those people had jobs, and it was probably thousands of people got paid to turn the lights on and off. And then electricity came in and all those people were out of work, right? We don't know anything close in the cybersecurity world that's going to change that. There's nothing even on the horizon, maybe blockchain, maybe quantum computing, but we don't have anything on the horizon that says that cybersecurity won't be this major concern and major industry for the next 20, 30 years. There's just nothing on the horizon that is like, oh, once this is out, once this is available, people aren't going to have to worry about security anymore. There's just nothing out there that we see. So with that, I'm going to transition into some technologies that you need to be aware of. So one is an operating system, Linux-based distribution called Kali Linux. Kali Linux is the cybersecurity version of Linux. So if you're going to a job interview one day and you're like, I think I might have heard of Kali, like it's going to be a no-brainer that they're going to realize you're not really in the cyber world. Kali Linux basically has all these different tools for you, 200 plus tools for you that do different things in cybersecurity. And that's kind of what this portion of the presentation is about. So before I go into that part of the presentation, there are some laws that you should be aware of, both as security professionals eventually, but also as moving into this world of Kali Linux and possibly starting to kind of work with this tool. There's a computer trespass law that basically says anything that you're scanning, anything that you're looking at that's not your data is illegal. There's a computer tampering law. So if you're making changes on other people's computers remotely because you have the ability to do it, you're breaking the law. And all these laws come with their felonies, which is different than a misdemeanor and more serious. They're all crimes, but these are part of your permanent record if you do wind up being charged with them. So there's an extremely, when we say ethical hacking or white hat hacking, we're doing it for the benefit of the company that we're doing it for, but we also have permission to do it for the company. The only thing that you have permission to do, some of the things we might look at today on, is your own system at home, your own laptop, your own home network. And even then, some things are questionable because your router is Verizon or your router is Optimum. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about networking in general. Whenever we talk about networking, we're talking about devices attaching to actual wired networks. The switches are using to connect everything is using TCP/IP. They're looking at packets. Packets have headers and packets have payloads. So the data is the payload of the message that you're sending. The message is going to be like the Amazon order with the credit card information or whatever it is, but that's encrypted. But the header is all unencrypted because it has to use that header to figure out who's going where. What's the source of my packet that I'm sending to what destination? The OSI model, which is now really a TCP/IP model, but the Open Systems Interconnectivity model is 7 layers. It starts with the physical layer, which is the actual electrical impulses, the high and low voltages that indicate a high voltage is 1 and a low voltage is 0. High voltage being fractions of a millivolt, but it's still sensing it. I can sense high and low voltages and turn them into ones and zeros. Those ones and zeros become groups of 8, which become a byte. And 8 ones and zeros together, we can numerically configure them between 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128. Depending on or off, we can add those numbers up. 128 plus, plus 2 is 130. 130 goes to the ASCII chart, and 130 equates to a capital C, the letter 8, the number 8, or the capital letter P, small letter P. Each one has a number that's unique to us on the ASCII chart. And that's how we actually turn electrical signals, high and low voltage, into actual data that means something to us. Okay. With security, we actually use something called the Macomber Cube. This is the CNS model, the Committee on National Security Systems. The Macomber Cube is what we call this. And what you want to look at is there's a CIA triad we always look at for confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Is my data available? Does it have integrity? Is it worth something? Is it correct? Are there misspellings in it? Is there data typed wrong in it, right? Does it maintain integrity? And is it confidential? Is it secret to the right people at the right time? And when you look at those three the CIA triad, as a cybersecurity professional, you want to try to figure out when it's in transmission, when it's being wirelessly transmitted, when it's being stored on your hard drive, when it's in the processor itself. What technologies and what technologies you have on your system? What policies do you have in place at your organization? And what are you doing with your people to train them and select them that make sure that anytime data is in storage, in processing, or in transmission at your organization, how at each level of those, how are all these things being used and educated to make sure that data stays confidential and has integrity and has availability, right? And that's kind of what we always use as an overarching guideline to basically say the Macomber Cube is what you're trying to basically make sure is in place at all times. Okay. So Kali Linux is an operating system. Operating systems like Windows, iOS, Android, Mac OS, Linux, they're all systems that control the functionality of the computer, right? The memory, the processing, the peripherals, everything else. That's what an operating system does. The different parts of a Linux operating system are the bootloader, the kernel, the initialization system, the daemons, the graphical server, the desktop environment applications. This different portion up here is an operating system, right? Kali Linux is an operating system. If you download Kali Linux and install it, you're going to change your operating system, right? There's something called a dual boot, but be careful. If you just think this is a piece of software, it's not. It's an operating system, so you're changing the operating system of whatever device you put this on. These are the popular Linux distributions that you may know of and may have heard of, but Kali Linux is very, very specific to cybersecurity, right? So these are all ones that are used on everything from Raspberry Pis to Arduinos to workstations that are, people don't want to pay for a Microsoft license or whatever. And these are operating systems that allow you to control different systems. Well, Kali Linux is an operating system that allows you to do over 200 tools of cybersecurity, activities, right? And basically what you'll see is Kali Linux operates very much like a typical operating system would with a graphical user interface. The difference is once you're into Kali, once you log in, you're dealing with different categories of cybersecurity activities and tool sets, right? So, you need to have tools to identify password attacks and to work through them, and wireless attacks and exploitation tools, right? The catch with Kali Linux is that it's a cat and mouse game, they call it. It's a two-way street, right? As much as you use it to learn about cybersecurity, to have a career protecting your organization, that they'll pay you for very handsomely, hopefully. the criminals are using it to learn all different ways to create new attacks on systems, right? So the system is a free download. It's created by a company for positive purposes and for network administrators to have a real tool to test their systems to see how strong they are and did they configure things right. But overall, the bad guys are going to use it to create new types of attacks. Okay. So with the tools that you'll see, information gathering, vulnerability analysis, stress testing, forensic tools. These are all the different tools that Kali Linux provides you with as far as a management tool and a development tool as well. And if you see, like, just as far as the tools, the names of the tools that we were talking about, you'll see things like Wireshark and Nmap that are some of the most popular tools, Aircrack NG, which is a wireless kind of network cracking tool. And these tools are used to test your current situation to make sure that your wireless router has a firmware update that is current, that it has the proper network security configured, that it has a strong password, that it has encryption enabled. And these tools will basically scan very quickly any access points on the wireless network and tell you what level of security you have and what your issues are. The good guy is going to use that and say, oh, I need to fix this, this, and this. The bad guy is going to say, oh my God, this is how I'm going to get in because it just told me where the vulnerabilities are, right? There is a PDF that we can make available of all those tools kind of listed. It just makes it a single one-page document that's very, very useful. And if you want to go and get Kali for yourself, you can download it at kali.org. You just select your particular distribution for your machine that you're looking to create, and you can start working with it on your own. Now, remember, our caveat here is that if you do decide to do that, you will be replacing the operating system on your local machine. So you'll wipe out kind of everything that you have on your machine if you decide to do that. Okay. Okay, and one of the things that's really neat about Kali is that it's pretty light enough that it can boot off of a USB stick. So if you have like a 1 gig USB thumb drive and you program your computer, your desktop or your laptop computer to boot first, not off a CD-ROM as an example, which a lot of them, some of the older machines will do off a CD-ROM or a DVD. The changing the boot order of boot operations to the USB drive, to the USB slot first, and then to the hard drive. If you put the Kali Linux USB in your system first, it'll boot off of that, so you can just kind of reboot and go into Kali and do your thing. And then when you reboot without the USB drive in there, it'll boot into Windows or whatever operating system you had before. It's pretty neat because when Kali does boot, it recognizes your hard drive, it recognizes your network card, and it lets you get internet, network access to the network you're on. So it's a pretty powerful tool to boot up a system on this particular network and then be able to operate off that network. Okay, so a little kind of tip on ethical hacking. We generally have 10 principles of ethical hacking, right? And I will respect others. I will be honest. I will treat others online in digital environment as I would want to be treated, right? Once we get into this world of cybersecurity as a career and you start really moving towards this as a career, it's very important that you do have an understanding that there's a very, very strong ethical component here of how you're going to use your newly acquired skill sets and your newly acquired technologies to make sure you're moving towards good and not moving towards the other side where you start causing all kinds of damage and mayhem, right? So that's always good to be aware. I'm going to show you one of our tools that we use quite often in any kind of network administration, but also cybersecurity specifically, is something called Wireshark. And there's a number of different packet capture tools, but in Wireshark, we're able to capture packets on our network, right? So any machine you install Wireshark on that you start capturing on, the packets that are captured, every single thing that's sent through that network card, or in promiscuous mode will be everything on your network at all. Your machine is listening to that network and it's listening to other devices on the network communicating with you. And those packets will speak volumes as far as what type of data is being transferred. So if you open up a packet on a machine, this is actually what was intercepted. And we can read it, we can look at it, we can even look at what type of packet it was, where it was supposed to go. We know if two machines are talking to each other too much, we know that's an issue. There shouldn't be that much traffic. There could be some sort of a malicious software on that machine, as from the cybersecurity analyst portion. People could be experiencing a slowness issue, and we can use Wireshark as a packet capture to go out and capture all those packets, and then we can analyze those packets in a number of different ways using filters and stuff to say, look, out of this 1 hour of capture or this 5 minutes of capture that I see going on my network, now I want you to analyze it in a certain way. I want to filter out only on one IP address, only on one type of data, and whatever it might be. So this type of software that we use in cybersecurity allows us to kind of capture all these packets and then analyze them and figure out kind of what's going on. Okay, so that's one of the most popular tools that are out there and that allow you to work and start to work in cybersecurity, because you're looking at network traffic as far as anomalies that might be happening on your network. Okay, one of the other tools that we'll go into is Zenmap. And Nmap is the console version, Zenmap is the Windows version. And if we simply bring up a particular target, in this case, I'll use my loopback address for this particular machine we're on. This is our training machine. And we want to do like an intense scan of that particular machine. What Nmap will do is go out and tell you everything that's running on that machine. Now, this will be any machine on your network. So if you go out and you run Nmap or Zenmap on a machine that's 3 doors down or 2 floors up or whatever it is, you're able to do that with Nmap. It'll tell you all the things that are running on that machine, what applications, what ports are being used, what ports are listening, what ports aren't. Now, on the good guy side, we're able to use this and script it out to go out and do periodic tests of all of our machines and say, hey, maybe Joe upstairs installed something recently. Maybe Mary put something on a computer. Maybe somebody hooked up a wireless router for ease of access, but that opened up vulnerabilities. But with these periodic scans and this automation, we're able to do that and start to be understanding that there's some things going on in our network that we may not be happy with, right? But these networking tools, capturing packets and scanning networks and devices for different things, allow us to do that. And the last thing I'll talk about, before we end for our session is the fact that you'll see a lot of these jobs for cybersecurity are requiring some sort of programming skill sets and scripting skill sets, and Python is one of the languages they use the most. So if you have any kind of Python experience that you currently have, you want to look at how you can turn that into scripting. One of the examples I usually give is that log that we just created for packet capture or for network analysis. That log that's created using Python to bring that log data in and parse it out and do your own analysis on it using Python is a very, very important tool set to have in the cybersecurity world. So if you're ever wondering why, when you look at jobs, they're talking about scripting and coding, whatever, and you're like, how does this apply to that world? That's what they want to see. All these tools would generate all these logs, but you have to think critically on what's really happening. How do you want to program around those logs to make sure that happens? Okay. And with that, I'm going to end the session. I'm going to thank you for attending. Hopefully there was some information that was valuable to you. And these sessions get recorded, as I mentioned, and it'll be on the YouTube channel probably within a week or two. All right. And you should get a notification of that in case you missed something. All right. All right. Have a great day, everybody.